What if I told you that the ancient conflict between two brothers, born thousands of years ago, still shapes the world we live in today? Imagine a battle that transcends history, culture, and religion. A battle so profound that its echoes reverberate across the Middle East, in the hearts of nations, and in the struggle between two of the world's greatest faiths. A conflict that began with a promise made to a patriarch, one that still fuels the flames of division between Jews and Arabs. But here's the twist: this isn't just about politics or land. It's a spiritual war, deeply rooted in the past, where ancient prophecies illuminate the future. The story of Isaac and Ishmael, two brothers from the same father, Abraham, has been a cornerstone of the tension between Israel and the Muslim world. What's the real story behind this age-old rivalry? And is there a chance for reconciliation? Is there hope for a lasting peace that transcends our earthly struggles? In this video, we'll uncover the prophetic significance of Isaac and Ishmael's lives, how their descendants have shaped the fate of nations, and how their story, surprisingly, may hold the key to understanding the path toward peace. Stay with us as we explore the ancient promises, the enduring conflict, and the divine hope that promises reconciliation through Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace. This isn't just history, it's a story of today, a story that's still unfolding. Are you ready to discover the true, profound implications of this ancient prophecy for our modern world? Let's dive into the incredible tale of Isaac and Ishmael. To truly understand the conflict between Isaac and Ishmael, we must begin with a journey back in time to the days of the patriarch Abraham, the man whom both Jews and Muslims revere as their father in faith. The story of Abraham is not just one of promises made, but also one of human failings, divine interventions, and a complex tapestry of spiritual history that we are still trying to fully comprehend today. At the heart of the biblical narrative is a promise, a divine covenant from God himself, which would form the cornerstone of a new, eternal relationship between the Creator and his chosen people. But the path to that promise was anything but smooth. In Genesis 12, God calls Abraham, then Abram, to leave his home and venture into the unknown. God promises him that he will make of him a great nation, a nation so vast that it will be as numerous as the stars in the sky, a nation whose influence will stretch across the world. However, there was a significant obstacle. Abraham and his wife Sarah, then Sarai, were both advanced in years, and Sarah was barren. It seemed an impossible task. How could God's promise of a great nation come to fruition when Sarah could not even bear a child? This challenge, as we know from the story in Genesis 16, led to the very first moment of division, the birth of Ishmael. In her desperation, Sarah suggested that Abraham father a child with her servant, Hagar. This was not an uncommon practice in the ancient world, and Sarah, no doubt feeling the crushing weight of her infertility, viewed this as a solution to her problem. Abraham, deeply desiring a child, agreed to this arrangement. Hagar conceived and bore Abraham's first son, Ishmael. For a time, it seemed like the solution had been found. Yet, from the very moment Ishmael was born, tensions began to rise. As Hagar's pregnancy progressed, Sarah grew increasingly bitter and jealous. The emotions of inadequacy and resentment began to surface. Hagar, once a servant in Sarah's household, now bore the child that was promised to Abraham, and Sarah found herself unable to look past her own feelings of envy. According to the text, Hagar fled from Sarah's mistreatment and found herself alone in the wilderness, near a spring. It was there that God intervened. The Bible tells us that an angel of the Lord appeared to Hagar and spoke to her. In this divine encounter, Hagar received a blessing, though not without a stern word of prophecy regarding her son. The angel spoke of Ishmael's destiny, saying, "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." Genesis 16 verse 12. This was not just a prediction of a personal future, but a prophecy that would echo through the centuries, shaping the history of nations. Ishmael, the son of Hagar and Abraham, was to become a man of untamable spirit, fiercely independent, proud, and, as we would come to see, embroiled in conflict. But that conflict wasn't just external. The tension between Sarah and Hagar wasn't the only strife in Abraham's life. After years of waiting for a child, Sarah's name was changed by God from Sarai to Sarah, meaning princess, and she eventually bore Abraham a son, Isaac. Isaac's birth was the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham, a miraculous birth that defied the laws of nature. While Abraham's heart swelled with joy for the son of promise, the birth of Isaac marked the beginning of a deep division between the two brothers, Isaac and Ishmael. As Isaac grew, tensions between the two boys became more pronounced. When Isaac was weaned, Sarah saw Ishmael mocking him. It wasn't a playful gesture, but a clear challenge to Isaac's position as Abraham's rightful heir. This mockery, as the Bible describes it, led Sarah to demand that Abraham cast out Hagar and Ishmael. "Get rid of that slave woman and her son," Sarah insisted. "For that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Genesis 21 verse 10. Abraham, torn between his love for his son Ishmael and his obedience to God's command, was deeply troubled by Sarah's demand. Yet, God spoke to Abraham, assuring him that he would bless Ishmael, but the covenant would remain with Isaac. The next day, Abraham sent Hagar and Ishmael into the desert with only bread and water. This event marked the official physical separation of the two brothers. The spiritual separation, however, had already begun and would continue for generations. God, in his mercy, protected Hagar and Ishmael, providing them with a well in the desert when they were near death from thirst. Ishmael grew up in the wilderness, becoming an expert archer, and God's promise to make him the father of a great nation began to unfold. Yet, the prophecy made earlier by the angel remained true. Ishmael's descendants, the Arabs, would live in constant conflict, not only with those outside their tribe but also with their own brothers. Now, let's take a step back and reflect on the deeper spiritual significance of this division. It's clear from the outset that this is no mere family squabble. The tension between Isaac and Ishmael represents something far greater. The division between two peoples, two faiths, two lineages that would shape the future of the world. From Isaac would come the Jewish people, the heirs of the covenant, while Ishmael's descendants would become the Arabs, who would later give birth to Islam. In the centuries that followed, this division would manifest in countless ways. The people of Israel, descendants of Isaac, would find themselves exiled, oppressed, and scattered across the world. The Arab nations, descendants of Ishmael, would rise to power, building great empires, only to be torn by internal strife, as the prophecy had foretold. The tension between the two peoples has continued for millennia, from the biblical era to the present day. But the question remains, why did this division occur in the first place? Why was Isaac chosen over Ishmael to inherit the divine covenant? The answer lies in the nature of the covenant itself. Isaac's birth was a miracle, a gift of grace from God. God's covenant with Isaac was not based on human effort or merit. It was a divine choice, a mystery of God's will, which transcended human understanding. In contrast, Ishmael's birth, while significant, was the result of human intervention. Sarah and Abraham, in their impatience and lack of faith, took matters into their own hands, trying to fulfill God's promise in their own way. And while God blessed Ishmael, the covenant would remain with Isaac, the child of divine promise. In examining this biblical origin of the conflict, we see the roots of much of the tension between Jews and Arabs in the modern world. The conflict isn't merely a territorial dispute. It's a spiritual one, rooted in the ancient divisions of Isaac and Ishmael. The tension that exists between Israel and the surrounding Muslim nations is not merely political. It is a continuation of the prophecy made in Genesis, a prophecy that foretold hostility between the descendants of these two brothers. But there is hope in the story. As we'll see in later parts, the story of Isaac and Ishmael is not a tale of eternal conflict. It is also a story of reconciliation, a story that points to the ultimate fulfillment of God's promises. While the division between Isaac and Ishmael has shaped the course of history, God's ultimate plan for peace and unity is revealed in the scriptures. The journey of these two brothers, though marked by separation and strife, is also a journey toward redemption and reconciliation. In our next section, we will delve deeper into the modern-day ramifications of this biblical conflict, examining how the ancient prophecy continues to play out on the global stage. But before we move forward, let us reflect on this crucial point. The conflict between Isaac and Ishmael is not just an ancient story. It is a living reality that affects us all. Whether we are aware of it or not, the legacy of these two brothers continues to shape the way we view the world today. Understanding this conflict is not just an academic exercise. It is a matter of spiritual significance, and it holds the key to understanding the deeper issues that divide us as a human race. As we continue our exploration of this ancient conflict, let us remember that, ultimately, God's plan is one of reconciliation. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is not just a tale of division. It is a story that points toward unity and peace, and that peace will come not through human effort, but through divine intervention. It is through the divine promise that we find hope, and it is through the grace of God that we can begin to heal the wounds of the past. The story of Isaac and Ishmael does not end in the dusty pages of the Bible. In fact, it reverberates in the present day, influencing the geopolitical landscape and the ongoing conflict between Israel and the surrounding Arab nations. To understand the depth of this conflict, we must see it not merely as a political or territorial dispute, but as a spiritual battle, one that echoes the ancient prophecy and the promises made to these two brothers. The divide between Isaac and Ishmael is not just a distant memory. It is a living reality, playing out in the headlines, in the streets of Jerusalem, in the battlefields of Syria, and in the very heart of the Muslim world. The birth of Isaac, as we saw in the first part of this story, marked the beginning of the covenant between God and the Jewish people. Isaac's descendants, the Israelites, became the heirs of God's promises, and their history is one of struggle, survival, and divine intervention. The covenant with Isaac was a promise not just of land but of spiritual inheritance, a promise that would be fulfilled through the coming of the Messiah, Jesus Christ, whose ultimate goal would be to reconcile all nations to God. But while Isaac's descendants were the heirs of the covenant, Ishmael's descendants were also blessed by God in their own right. Ishmael, the son of Abraham and Hagar, was promised greatness and would become the father of a great nation. His descendants, the Arabs, would rise to power, building vast empires and spreading their influence far and wide. Yet, this blessing came with its own set of challenges. As the prophecy foretold, Ishmael's descendants would live in hostility, not just with those outside their tribes, but with one another as well. The Arab world, over the centuries, has been plagued by internal divisions and conflicts. The split between the Sunni and Shia branches of Islam is perhaps the most notable example of this internal strife, a division that has led to countless wars and bloodshed throughout the Middle East. This internal conflict within the Muslim world can be seen as a direct fulfillment of the prophecy that Ishmael's hand would be against everyone, and everyone's hand would be against him. But the conflict between the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael is not only an internal struggle within the Muslim world. It is also a direct and ongoing battle between two of the world's major religions, Judaism and Islam. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 marked a turning point in this age-old conflict. The creation of Israel was seen by many Jews as the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham, the return to the land that was promised to Isaac's descendants. For the Palestinians, many of whom are descendants of Ishmael, the creation of Israel represented the Nakba, the catastrophe. The displacement of Palestinians, many of whom had lived in the land for centuries, was viewed as a profound injustice, a modern-day echo of Hagar and Ishmael's expulsion from Abraham's camp. This division between Jews and Arabs is not just about land. It is about identity. For the Jewish people, Israel is more than just a political entity. It is a spiritual homeland, a place of divine promise. For the Arab world, the existence of Israel represents a challenge to their own identity, a threat to the narrative of their history and the land they have inhabited for centuries. The biblical separation between Isaac and Ishmael is still being played out in the hearts and minds of people today. The tension between these two brothers is reflected in the ongoing struggles in the Middle East, from the Israeli-Palestinian conflict to the broader struggles between the West and the Muslim world. At the heart of this conflict is the city of Jerusalem. Jerusalem is not only a political capital, it is the spiritual center of the world for both Jews and Muslims. For Jews, Jerusalem is the site of the ancient temple, the place where God's presence dwelt among his people. For Muslims, Jerusalem is the third holiest site in Islam, the place where the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during the night journey. The battle for control of Jerusalem is a symbol of the larger struggle between Isaac's descendants and Ishmael's descendants. It is not just a battle for territory. It is a battle for the soul of the land, a land that holds deep religious significance for both faiths. But what does this conflict mean for us today, especially for those of us who are not directly involved in the political or military struggles of the region? What is the spiritual significance of the ongoing tension between the children of Isaac and Ishmael? To answer this, we must look beyond the headlines and consider the deeper spiritual truths that underlie this ancient conflict. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is not just about two brothers and their descendants. It is about the human tendency to cling to division, to hold on to grudges, and to refuse reconciliation. It is about the tendency to define ourselves by our differences rather than our shared humanity. And it is about the call to rise above these divisions, to see the image of God in each person, and to seek reconciliation, even in the face of deep-seated hostility. The Bible speaks of a time when the division between Isaac and Ishmael will be healed. In Genesis 25 verse 9, after the death of Abraham, we read that his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him. After years of separation and conflict, these two brothers, who had been at odds for so long, came together to honor their father. This moment of reconciliation is not just a historical event. It is a prophetic sign of what is to come. It speaks of a future time when the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael will be reconciled, not just politically, but spiritually. It is a picture of the unity that will come when we, as a human race, learn to see one another not as enemies, but as brothers and sisters, all children of the same God. In our modern times, there are glimpses of this reconciliation beginning to take place. In recent years, we have witnessed some Arab nations, such as the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, taking steps toward peace with Israel. The Abraham Accords, as these agreements are known, are a surprising development in a region that has been defined by conflict for so long. While these peace agreements do not resolve all the issues in the region, they are a step in the right direction, a sign that the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael can begin to move beyond their ancient divisions. This move toward peace is a hopeful sign, but it also raises important questions. Why has it taken so long for these nations to come to the table? What is it that has prevented reconciliation between the children of Isaac and Ishmael? The answer, I believe, lies in the deep spiritual wounds that both sides carry. For the Jewish people, the trauma of the Holocaust and the centuries of persecution they have faced have made them deeply protective of their homeland. For the Arab world, the loss of land and identity in the creation of Israel has created a sense of injustice that is difficult to overcome. These wounds are real, and they cannot be healed overnight. But as we see in the story of Isaac and Ishmael, reconciliation is possible. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to forgive, but it is possible. As we reflect on the story of Isaac and Ishmael in modern times, we must ask ourselves, what role do we play in this ongoing conflict? It may seem distant, something that only affects those living in the Middle East. But the reality is that this conflict is a reflection of the divisions we face in our own lives. We all have people in our lives who we consider other, people with whom we have deep differences. And yet, as followers of Christ, we are called to overcome these divisions, to love our enemies, and to seek peace where there is strife. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is not just about two ancient brothers. It is about all of us, and it is a call to reconcile, to heal the wounds of the past, and to live in peace. The spiritual reconciliation between Isaac and Ishmael is a long-term process, but it is one that is already beginning, both in the political realm and in the hearts of individuals. As we move forward, we must remember that true peace is not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding, forgiveness, and love. In the end, it is through the grace of God that these divisions will be healed, and it is through our willingness to embrace that grace that we will find true peace. This, I believe, is the ultimate message of the story of Isaac and Ishmael in modern times. The call to reconciliation, to unity, and to the peace that can only come through the divine intervention of God. The ancient conflict between Isaac and Ishmael has spanned millennia, shaping the course of history in ways that no one could have foreseen when God made his covenant with Abraham. From their bitter rivalry emerged two peoples, the Jewish people, the descendants of Isaac, and the Arab nations, the descendants of Ishmael. For generations, these two groups have lived in the shadow of their forefathers' division, bound by the prophecy that Ishmael's descendants would live in hostility towards all their brothers, including Isaac's. Yet, in the midst of this centuries-long struggle, there is a powerful and surprising promise of reconciliation. It is a promise that transcends the conflict, one that holds the key to healing and unity, if only we can understand it and embrace its true meaning. At first glance, the story of Isaac and Ishmael seems to be a tale of unending conflict, a prophecy fulfilled in real time through wars, violence, and territorial disputes. From the expulsion of Hagar and Ishmael into the wilderness to the rise of the State of Israel and the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian struggle, the cycle of division seems never-ending. The modern-day conflict between Jews and Muslims is an echo of the ancient rift between these two brothers. But what if I told you that there is more to this story? What if this division is not the end of the tale, but a chapter in a much larger narrative? A narrative that points to ultimate reconciliation, unity, and peace. In the Bible, after Abraham's death, there is a moment of profound significance that offers a glimpse of what this reconciliation might look like. In Genesis 25 verse 9, we are told that Isaac and Ishmael, after years of separation and tension, came together to bury their father Abraham. Think about that for a moment. Two brothers who had been at odds for years, each carrying the weight of their ancestors' conflicts, came together in an act of unity and respect. They didn't just stand side by side. They worked together to honor their father, the man who had given them life, despite their differences. This act of reconciliation is more than just a familial gesture. It is a prophetic sign of what is to come. It is a symbol of hope for the future, a future where the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael will find a way to live together in peace, despite their ancient divisions. For many, this moment might seem like a mere detail in the larger narrative of Genesis, but it carries profound spiritual weight. The Bible doesn't include such details without purpose. The fact that Isaac and Ishmael were able to come together to honor their father, despite their differences, is not just a historical fact. It is a foreshadowing of a greater reconciliation that will take place in the future. This act of unity between two brothers is a glimpse of what is possible when we choose to set aside our differences and work together for a common goal. It is a powerful reminder that, despite the deep wounds of the past, reconciliation is always possible when we choose to act with love and understanding. But how does this reconciliation play out on a global scale? How do we move from the deep divisions of today to the unity that was promised in the Bible? This is where the story of Isaac and Ishmael takes on even greater significance. It's not just about two brothers reconciling. It's about the world reconciling. It's about the long-standing conflict between Jews and Muslims, between Israel and the Arab world, finding resolution. And while it might seem impossible given the political, cultural, and religious barriers that exist, the Bible gives us hope by showing us that reconciliation is always possible with God's help. In recent years, we've seen signs of reconciliation between Israel and some Arab nations. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020 by the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco, marked a historic shift in Middle Eastern diplomacy. These agreements, which normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations, were a breakthrough in a region that had been defined by conflict for decades. What's even more remarkable is that these agreements were named after Abraham, the patriarch of both Jews and Arabs. This symbolic gesture was a powerful reminder that, despite centuries of division, the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael still share a common father, and that common ancestry could be a foundation for peace. But the question remains, why has it taken so long for these nations to come together? What is it that has prevented reconciliation between Jews and Muslims for so long? The answer lies in the spiritual and emotional wounds that both sides carry. For the Jewish people, the trauma of the Holocaust and the centuries of persecution they've faced have created a deep-seated need for security and protection. The establishment of Israel was seen not just as a political necessity, but as a divine mandate, a return to the land that God had promised to the descendants of Isaac. For the Arab world, the creation of Israel represented a catastrophic loss of land and identity, a rupture in their historical narrative. The displacement of Palestinians during the creation of Israel, the Nakba or catastrophe, is still felt today, and the pain of that loss has fueled much of the resentment toward Israel. These wounds are real, and they cannot be healed overnight. But as we look at the story of Isaac and Ishmael, we see that reconciliation is not impossible. It will take time, effort, and a willingness to forgive, but it is possible. The Bible tells us that God will bring about reconciliation in the end. In the book of Isaiah, we are given a vision of a time when all nations will come together in peace. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Isaiah 2 verse 4. This is the ultimate promise of reconciliation, a promise that goes beyond the division between Isaac and Ishmael, beyond the conflict between Israel and the Arab world. It is a promise of peace for all people, a peace that can only come through the divine intervention of God. The promise of reconciliation is also closely tied to the figure of Jesus Christ. Christians believe that Jesus is the Prince of Peace, the one who came to break down the walls of hostility that divide humanity. In Ephesians 2 verses 14 to 16, the Apostle Paul writes, "For he himself is our peace, who has made the two groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility." Jesus, through his life, death, and resurrection, offers a way for all people, Jew and Gentile, Jew and Arab, Isaac and Ishmael, to be reconciled to God and to one another. The ultimate reconciliation will not be political, but spiritual. It will be a reconciliation that comes from the heart, when people of all nations recognize their shared humanity and their need for God's grace. As we reflect on the promise of reconciliation, we must ask ourselves, what can we do to contribute to this healing process? How can we, as individuals, embody the spirit of reconciliation in our own lives? It starts with recognizing that, like Isaac and Ishmael, we are all part of the same human family. Despite our differences, whether they be religious, cultural, or political, we all share a common ancestry, a common creator. We are all brothers and sisters, and we are called to love one another as God has loved us. Reconciliation begins with humility. It requires us to acknowledge our own faults, to seek forgiveness, and to offer forgiveness to others. It requires us to lay down our weapons, whether they be physical, emotional, or ideological, and to embrace the possibility of peace. This is the path that Jesus has shown us, and it is the path that leads to true reconciliation, not just between individuals, but between nations, cultures, and faiths. The promise of reconciliation is not just for the descendants of Isaac and Ishmael. It is for all of us. It is a promise that transcends time, a promise that points to the ultimate fulfillment of God's plan for peace on earth. As we move forward, let us hold onto this hope, knowing that, with God's help, reconciliation is not only possible, it is inevitable. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is not one of eternal conflict. It is a story that points to a future where division is no more, and where all people are united in the love of God. As we come to the end of this powerful journey through the story of Isaac and Ishmael, we are reminded of a profound truth. The ancient rift between these two brothers is not merely a historical event. It is a living, breathing part of the world we inhabit today. The conflict that has shaped the course of history, the struggles of nations, and the very heart of spiritual and religious identities is a testament to the deep divisions that have existed for millennia. Yet, in the midst of this, there is a promise of hope, a promise of reconciliation, healing, and peace that transcends every conflict. The story of Isaac and Ishmael is not a tale of eternal division. It is a prophecy of what is to come, a reminder that even the deepest wounds can be healed through divine intervention. The promise of reconciliation is one that affects all of us. It is not merely a distant ideal but a reality that is unfolding in our time. Whether we are witnessing peace agreements like the Abraham Accords or seeing the beginning of personal reconciliation, the message is clear. Peace, true peace, is possible. We have seen that reconciliation between Isaac and Ishmael was not just a historical act but a symbol of what God desires for all of us. A world where division gives way to unity, where hatred is replaced by love, and where the wounds of the past are healed by the grace of God. The challenge, however, lies in our willingness to embrace this truth. We must be willing to set aside our differences, to seek understanding, and to walk the path of forgiveness. It is not easy, and it will not happen overnight. But with God's guidance, it is a path we are all called to walk. In these final moments, let us remember the name of this channel, God's Advice. If the insights shared today have touched your heart, if you've been inspired by the story of reconciliation, then I encourage you to take a step toward peace in your own life. Subscribe to God's Advice, like this video, and share it with others who need to hear this message of hope and healing. Together, we can spread the word of divine reconciliation and work toward a world that reflects the love and unity that God desires for His creation. As you reflect on this powerful message, ask yourself, how can I be a part of God's plan for reconciliation? How can I contribute to healing the wounds that divide us? The answer begins with you, by choosing to live in peace, by embracing forgiveness, and by sharing the love of God with those around you. So, subscribe, like, and share the video, and remember, God's Advice is here to guide you on your journey toward reconciliation and spiritual growth. Let us all strive to live in unity, to follow the path that God has set before us, and to work together for a future where division no longer defines us. Thank you for watching, and may peace and love reign in your hearts. God's Advice, where divine guidance meets the heart of humanity.